All right, John, you are up.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, we don't need much of an introduction for our friend Mike Friday. He's a long-term member of society as well as a past president who will be showing us the proper way to get ready for this upcoming show in Mondays in May. So once again, Mike Friday. Yay!
Okay. I inherited these slides, so let's see. I guess this moves forward. So we're going to break this into two parts. First part, we're going to talk about the show entry, entering your plants and so forth like that. Then we'll talk a little bit about arrangements, and there's a whole bunch of slides, and we'll just kind of critique them and see what we think about them. And I was thinking about organizing some of the stuff we've got here, but I always take a chance in damaging someone's plants. So we'll just critique what some photographs of some exhibits. So one of the biggest things is if you're going to enter a plant into the show, you want to make sure that it's not, past its prime, that somehow the cat didn't nipped at it or something like that, and it's kind of ill-formed or whatever. Make sure it's symmetric. Sometimes when they come out, if you move them or whatever, sometimes they'll do some funny things and all that stuff. So you really want, for plants that you're going to enter in the show, to be in nice shape, not past its prime. You don't want to put it in the exhibit and the next day have the flower fall off, that kind of thing. And it's perfectly legitimate to go down to the Sarah or Brian's table and find the nicest one you can and go run over and enter it. It's your plant.
Obvious about it.
No, I mean, that's really what the vendors, the best thing is they got a whole bunch of them all blooming. You get to pick the best ones. I want that one, So we go ahead and do that. And like we said, usually what we're looking for is the wow factor. I mean, that's what the public goes for when they see the big specimen kind of plants with 16 Cattleya flowers on it, just gorgeous and all that stuff. And then Brian and we bring in these weeds that you got to get a microscope to see the flowers, but we'll press on. One of the things is we've got our water is so heavy here, and we get so much mineral that I know in my plants sometimes I can crinkle the leaves and it's like it snows, So try to get the plants clean the night before or whatever. Go through and you can spray them with. I spray them with like vinegar. And that kind of emulsifies the stuff and then rinse them off and all that stuff. So, I mean, that's what I do, where you can wipe the leaves. I think some people use, what do they use to clean the leaves? Lemon juice. Well, that's another acidic kind of thing there.
Neem oil.
Neem oil. They try to say don't use the miracle, the glow, the leaf glow stuff. They said try to avoid that because I guess it looks a little too unnatural. But you want to. So, and then go ahead and remove, go ahead and water your plants. Make sure you remove any dead leaves, or if part of the leaf is kind of brown or whatever, get the shears and clip it off. So, try to get it to look as good as you can. Also be sure to make sure that you're not bringing any pests into the show. If you've had them, depending upon where they've had them or whatever, if you water them, a lot of times that'll drive the critters out. If you see that, then put that plant away, because we want to make sure we don't bring any pests into the show. So here would be an example here. If you got a dead area leaf here, just chop it off and then clean up the plant as much as you can. And then also stake the flowers, put the stakes in and the butterfly clips to hold the flowers still, because if you let the flower spike flop around on the drive up here, it's probably going to be not in as good a shape. And this is where we're talking about the staking. Stake them up. Give them the best view you can give them. There's more on the staking. I had a plant this morning I brought, and
I think so, Mark.
when I took this is one of my jewel orchids, and when I took it out of the it was kind of growing up through my planter. So when I pulled it out, this flower stalk was so heavy that it was starting to list. So I went ahead and grabbed a stack and one of these butterfly clips and stuck it in there.
Mike,
So-
if you'd hold that in front of the computer, then our online folks will be able to see it too.
Yeah, this is what is this thing? Plexalexia olivacea. So this is a terrestrial. I just love this thing. But this would be something that you can order. You can enter as just there's different categories. One of the things is you can enter a plant just for the foliage. So this one could probably be entered as a species and as a foliage just because of the, you know, the pretty foliage. But it's a good example of when these things get this tall and all that stuff, you know, they start listing and all that stuff. And really this one should be staked up as well. One thing when we enter the plants, we don't want to put a plant in exhibit with these pots with all the this, you know, the calcification and stuff on it. So usually you get like a real nice, pretty decorative pot, or wrap it with burlap or you know, some kind of black material or whatever. So that's one thing that you do after you clean it up. And make sure you put your name like on a piece of tape on the bottom. So what happens is if you forget about it when you put it in the exhibit or whatever, we get the plant back to you. So make sure you put it in there. And then when they don't want to really see these plant labels here, so they want you to kind of take these and hide these things. And we'll talk about labeling here in just a minute. So, true story, whole bunch of years ago, the society went, set up a beautiful, beautiful exhibit, spent hours and hours and hours setting it up, and no one remembered to enter it.
Oh, no.
And if it is not on the list and entered properly, it's not judged.
The whole table?
The whole thing. It was a society exhibit. So I think they ended up, you know, people that entered their individual plants were all right, but the exhibit itself wasn't listed. So if you decide to set up your own little tabletop or whatever, you enter each plant and you also enter the exhibit. So don't forget to enter your exhibits. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but here's a copy of the judging schedule that's coming out. And you don't have to be an expert at this. If you get the basic information down, the people doing the registration will help you get it in the right spot. And we'll go into this. Yeah, okay. Get into that. So the show schedule is set up like this. It's pretty cryptic unless you really, really know what you're talking about, like Pragmapetum besseyi. If you don't know what that plant looks like, just bring your plant and we'll help figure out which class it needs to be in. But the deal is you usually want to go to the first class you find that meets it, because if the judges are going by and they say, oh, this should have been in the further on down the list of one of the further classes, they can move it. If you pick the one too low and they've already gone by it, it's too late. Let's see if there's a plant tag. Where is it? We have out here. Let's just look at this. So this is what kind of what the plant tag looks like. This is a little bit fuzzy. So the exhibit would be whatever the exhibit number, if the societies are, or whoever's exhibit is, there'll be a list with those numbers on it. And then the letter would be the actual person or within the exhibit. So I'm just saying in the Oklahoma City exhibit, say it's 10. And if we got, and then we'll assign each person that enters a plant in the society exhibit, we'll give them a different letter. So you may be A and someone else may be B, someone else be C. Got to make sure that, you know, there's no identifying about who the real owner is, because the judges are going to be impartial on this stuff. So we try not to make sure that we have these things coded, and only the registrar will have the list of who's there. The class, I said, we'll kind of talk about here in a second, but you put your plant name here. So we'll start off with the genus and then the actual name of the plant. And then here we're getting into the Grex or the variety. And if it has any awards, you'll list the awards. And then down here, the two parents. And if you don't know what they are, we'll have the computers there. We can sort it up for you. So what I recommend is if we look this thing up this time, go home and keep track of that. So next time we don't have to look it up again. So use Doug's spreadsheet or create your own spreadsheet. I do the same thing. I've got the name of the plant, and then I've got next to that the two parents and so forth. So you only have to look it up once. Now we'll go back. So if you have a plant and you have no idea what the family parentage is or whatever, it's just one that you saw at Walmart and you said, I really like that, go ahead and enter it. And where it says name, we just say no name, no ID. No A, you know, NA, whatever. It's perfectly fine for ribbon judging. You can't get an AOS award for it, but you can certainly get a ribbon and possibly a trophy. I mean, a lot of times I'll see something at Walmart or whatever, and I just love the color, and it's like, I don't care that I don't have a name for it. I like the flower. I'm growing it for me. So okay. So already talked about the parentage and all that stuff. Okay. Let me go back. So when we talk about what class things are in, you know, we have these different sections in here. The 300s are the Phalaenopsis kind of stuff. And it's, if you see how it's broken down here, white, all white, white with a colored lip, white with blushes, white with stripes and all that stuff. So that's what you're trying to do when you're looking at the show schedule, is you get the right genus or whatever, and then you start working your way down to try to find it. And then sometimes they've got them. This one is 2 3/4 inches in diameter crossed or less. And then down here would be the next batch would be the ones that are greater. So that's why there's always a little ruler built into our show schedule to help you measure. And that's less than 2 3/4. And then you just keep going down till you get to the right color. And then there's usually one at the bottom. It's like all other colors not described above, but we'll help you work your way through that. So just, you know, just get the parent stuff squared away. And if you have a question about which one it should be in or measuring the flower or whatever, just go to the registration table and we'll be glad to help you with that. And so there's a whole group for Cattleyas. Okay, the Cypripediums, there's a whole group of those. All the Bandaceous ones. So kind of get to the right family, the Phalaenopsis, the Oncidiums, that the Dendrobiums, and all the weird stuff like Doug brought in his nun orchid there. That'll be in the miscellaneous genera. So if you get your name right, and we'll look up the parentage. Sometimes you can just Google it. Just Google this, and then they'll tell you what the parent is. where we got the database. We had the excellent discussion last month talking about the new AOS database. I can't wait to get in there and fiddle with that. And we told you,
Orchid Pro is its only orchids that have been awarded. Whereas Orchid Quiz has other orchids in there as well, any of their progeny,
And it's only accessible if you're an AOS member.
yeah, so.
Orchid Pro, so, but it's
Yeah.
a place to start.
Yeah, and like I said, the big thing is, once you look this stuff up and you find it, keep track of it so we don't have to keep hunting through it every show going through this stuff. So we'll help you get to the proper class. And we'll help you look this stuff up if you don't know it. Okay, and then you figure out which exhibit you're gonna be in, either your own or someone else's. And then if you're by yourself, if it's just your exhibit, there won't be anything here. If there's 2 or 3 people all in the same society exhibit, then there could be 20 there. So these things, there's like 2 copies of this plant tag, right? We take 1 copy, we turn it in to the registrars, okay? And the other one stays with the plant, and we loosely hook it on with a piece of bell wire or whatever you want to call it these days. Just a little S, and we hang it ever so gently, usually on the flower spike or something easy to find. Okay, and we turn the other one in the registers. Remember what I said. Also, don't forget to enter your exhibit. And this is where there's a sheet telling you if there's multiple exhibits, they'll assign you a exhibitor number. And so first time they go through the judging and all that stuff, that's all the ribbing stuff. Then usually later in the afternoon, well, during the ribbon judging, if they see something that really looks good, they'll mark it for later for AOS judging. They'll put a mark on it, and later in the day, they'll pull those plants and they'll go off and deliberate on the AOS judging. What I'd recommend is if you got some of these tags, go ahead and start now, filling them out. Have them ready before you get there, because it's kind of a madhouse when everybody's scrambling around trying to get everything exhibit. So if you've got some of these tags with you, go ahead and get started now, filling things out. Or at least write them down on a sheet of paper or a spreadsheet or whatever, so it's real quick to write it down when we get there.
We try to save the paper tags, a lot of after AOS judging is all done, we pull those paper tags off all the plants. Many people just pitch them. We tuck them behind our exhibit so that those people who want to save their plant tags, which I do as reference, especially for weird stuff that it hasn't been clear what class they were, or sometimes the judges, like Mike said, will reclass. You put it in the wrong class, and they decided, no, it's a different class, and they can still move it, and they should write that on your plant tag. Well, I want to save that for future reference, so we will keep your paper tags. If you don't claim them by the time the show's cleaned up, they're gonna get pitched, but just to let you know, we won't throw them away until you have a chance to get them.
Yeah, and just be aware that every once in a while we do change the schedules. So that always double check, if you thought it was in 310 this time, be sure to double check to make sure it's still 310, because these things are fairly stable, but every once in a while there were some changes to the show schedules that were discussed in the recent Sharoga meetings and so forth like that. So any questions about that? I mean, normally we'd practice this, but I think we have plenty of people here that are pretty experienced in this.
What time, what's the deadline for us to bring any plants that are flowered and ready for the show? What's the deadline to bring them down here?
Okay, it's gonna be Jerry and Johnita and Catherine are putting in our Oklahoma Orchids exhibit that will be set up on Friday. Registration deadline for all plants, all exhibits is 5 p.m. on Friday and not 1 minute past, because then Ellen or I have to sequester ourselves and put all the judging folders together. We want all plants here, whether they're going in an exhibit or on the bench area, which Catherine and John will be setting up. Those are orchids that are going to be judged. You want ribbon judged and or AOS judged that will not be in an exhibit, which is just fine. Those all have to be entered by 5. Now, I think Catherine and Jerry, you guys want everybody's plants here by noon Friday. If you want to bring your plants in Thursday evening, after we get the staging, the tables all set up and everything, we'll have a couple of tables off to the side. If it's easier for you to bring your plant Thursday evening, please do so. We really would encourage you to make out those registration tags ahead of time to the best of your ability.
Side, because I don't have any.
We'll have plants. We have plenty of NCR plant tags. We've got some now. If you want to take some tags with you to fill them out ahead of time, or Douglas, I think you're going to show people how to do tags online. We have a fillable form now, which is real, and you can read what's on the tag. That's the nicest thing is the handwritten ones. If you're judging and you're like, what in the world is this? You don't even know where to look for the plant because you can't read the plant name, and they'll struggle with it for just a little bit. And they're going to say, I can't read it, move on. And that's it.
I'll show y'all how to use the fillable PDF here in just a moment.
And Juanita mentioned a certain time for what type of plant? You said 3 o'clock or what? Noon.
And the OOS exhibit. If you're bringing for our OOS.
Oh, I knew, 5 o'clock, we just want one judge.
We're gonna sit, right, we're gonna be setting that up and it's gonna be something 5 and we're all set up.
Now, John and Catherine, do you have any time? Well, you're going to be busy with the OOS exhibit, but between the two of you on the bench area, do you have a time limit, or is it okay if somebody brings a plant in at 5 minutes till 5? You can't really set up the bench area until all the plants are there because you don't know how many cats you're going to have or how many paths. And so if you want to set a time limit of 3 or something.
We just can't have someone roll in with 50 plants at 5 minutes to 5.
No. So let's say noon for the OOS exhibit, 3 p.m. for the bench exhibit. But all tags and everything have to be filled out and submitted to registration by 5 p.m., including your exhibit. No, but it may go to the bench area.
So Janita just said that she won't throw it out if it's 5 minutes late.
So for those of you that are specifically wanting your orchids to go into the exhibit, if you know the name of your orchid, if you can email me that, I don't need parentage. Just if you have the name, because it's nice to, before the show starts, to make those lovely little black labels that we put in after we take all of those handwritten tags and stuff off to make the exhibit look really nice for the public. I try and make those ahead of time, as many names as I have ahead of time, instead of obviously that night, whenever it's late or whatever, that I'm sitting there having to write out the labels and get them staked to tags and all that kind of stuff before we put them in. So if you can email them. So if you have it, if you don't, I can still write it, but that saves time if I just do it, the evening or during the week before. So if you have it, let me know.
Yeah, make sure when you're, before you leave the house and all that stuff, you actually look and make sure your tags, if there's any question about what it is, because sometimes the tags, they get kind of smushed or whatever. You may have to go back through a list and say, oh, that's what that is. Because you don't want to get all the way up here and it's like, now what is it? So
I think you noticed on there too, if we see signs of bugs, one little fungus neck's not going to let us go screaming out of the building. But if we find any sort of infestation of any sort of bugs or disease, we're going to ask you to take your plant home. Okay. So make sure you check everything good.
yeah, about a week before, if you want, sprinkle some kind of 7 dust or whatever that's legitimate today in the pots, and that'll chase everything out. Give them a week to vacate. especially if you have anything that's outside, but, yeah, we definitely don't want any kind of infestations. We ready to move on? Okay. So, okay, we'll take so if you're gonna set up your own exhibit, you can be fairly elaborate or you can be fairly small. We have one class called 5 plants or less. So if you have some, just a handful of plants or whatever, go ahead and consider, something as small as that. So, I mean, you don't have to have a greenhouse full of, hundreds of plants or whatever. If you've got just a few that are, kind of showy and look nice or whatever, go ahead and consider, entering your own exhibit. And we'll talk, one thing that you should probably do is, it's really good, is practice setting up your exhibit before you get here. So take your plants, get them on the kitchen table, kind of sort them around, and we'll kind of talk about how to sort them around and what to look for on that stuff. And then sometimes you need to raise or lower them. So you need to have like extra pots or something, or you can change the height of your plants and so forth like that. Make sure you have either the decorative pots or you've got some cloth material that you can wrap them with some safety pins or whatever, to hold the thing in place. So make sure, start working a couple of days ahead of time to make sure you've got all your supplies ready to go, before you get there. And after you kind of get it organized where you think that's the way you want your plants to look like when you actually get here, snap a picture of it. It makes it so much easier if you've already made those decisions, a day before, the night before, or whatever, than to get down here and then with all the hustle and bustle and everybody's running around and all table space gets kind of limited for staging and so forth, that you already have a plan. And there's no reason with everybody's got a camera on their phone to snap a picture. It's not a big deal. One thing is you tend to set the colors up by the spectrum. You'll have all the reds on one side and all the lavender and purple on the other. And you have this rainbow, broad spectrum kind of scheme. And we'll see how all this works when we actually see some examples. You can have other things in your exhibit besides just orchids. If you want to bring in some ornamental plants, some ferns or lily plants or something like that to give some little bit more texture, a little bit more more texture to the exhibit, it's fine. We recommend not having flowers that are non-orchids. It's not prohibited, but we want to see the orchids and we don't want some big lily to disrupt what we're looking at when we're looking at the orchids. So, and you might want to have some moss or something like that, some other kinds of things like that, or bark or whatever to help set your table up. Normally we do like black tablecloths and so forth like that. And then on the back, we'll also have like black, because we want the flowers to stand out, not the TV screen and everything else. So one thing that works really good for backdrops is get some PVC pipe with some elbows and some T's, and you can make yourself a nice frame and then throw some black cloth over it and some bobby pins to hold it on. That's something to think about too. Also, lighting makes a big difference when you're showing your plants. So, get a couple of freestanding lights and to be able to shine on your plants and so forth like that. I have a whole kit of this stuff in a bag, so it's ready to go whenever I want to go for this stuff. So just think about those kinds of things. We'll provide the tables. You don't really have to provide the table unless you want to use something different. So we'll have that. On the fabric and all that stuff, make sure it's clean and not dirty. And so you might want to wash it and then fold it nicely and then iron it to get any wrinkles out of it. And it should go down even with the floor, but not sagging on the floor. So you may need some pins or whatever to hem this stuff up. like Catherine was talking about, she's gonna come up with really nice labels for the plants, and usually they'll use like black or something like that, and then they'll use like gold pen or whatever to write the name on it. And they put them on long stakes so that we don't want the plastic tags being the, showing and all that stuff. So we tend to use these specialized one-time use tags for that. So you might even want to think about that. I know one time we did an exhibit having to do with music. Music was the theme. So I used, I went on the internet, I found myself a picture of notes, the line for
Oh, Turtle
music.
Cliff or
The,
something.
the clef and all that stuff, and I found that, and I used that as the focal point for my plant names and all that kind of stuff. And turned out that I ended up getting an Orchid Digest Trophy Award that time for that. So, think outside the box, make the labels look creative as well. They don't, black on gold or silver or something like that looks really, really good. But if you tie it back to the theme that you're trying to go through with the show, that can help as well. Let's see. Yeah, and I just talked about this, make sure you bring like pots or little boxes or something in order to be able to change the height of your plants. And hopefully, like you said, you've tried this the night before and you know exactly what you want. We just talked about floor lighting. That helps too. Just remember that these kind of lights are blue-green tend to be, and they don't really help with the flower color. So if you get a full spectrum bulb or something like that, you're going to help bring out the true color of your plants. And make sure you clean up, anything that's not supposed to be part of the exhibit. We don't have stray lint or debris floating around. So here's some of the classes for exhibits, non-commercial versus commercial. So the commercial are your growers like Sarah Pratt and Brian and Mark and so forth like that. They have to move, they have their own category for commercial. We would all be non-commercial. And the nice thing is a novice is someone who's never exhibited before. You can only be a novice one time. So if it's the first time you've ever entered a plant, go for the novice, okay? Because we try to make sure that, everybody, we get as much representation as we can, and we'd like everybody to go home with a trophy. Amateur is someone's got a fairly small growing area, 500 square feet, growing or less. Private is 500 square feet, growing space more. We've got the 5 or fewer orchid group. Then we get into the group exhibits, which can be 2 or more people. And then we have like society exhibits. Yeah.
Multiple exhibits and, like an exhibit versus a class too, or is one plant in one thing?
The only time you could enter it more than once is if you, like this thing, you could have entered it as a miscellaneous genera because it's not a Cattleya or whatever, but you could also list it as a foliage one. So that would be an opportunity where you could do it 2 times. Or maybe miniature. So.
Could you do it by itself and then an exhibit too?
No.
No?
You
It'll
enter your plants,
Right.
that gets its own category. Then if you do an exhibit, you have the one exhibit. And it's
My understanding that you can only enter one exhibit category. Like you could enter as a novice if it was your very first time, or you could enter as like the 5 or fewer, but you couldn't enter both.
But if
Yep.
you have, let's say you put in an exhibit, you have 1 orchid.
Yeah.
But that's what you wanted to do and it was lovely. Then you fill out a tag for your plant that's in the exhibit. And you also fill out another tag to enter your exhibit. So when you walk up to the registration desk, you're gonna be turning in 2 tags, one for your plant or any plants that are in that exhibit and your exhibit. Now, with the Oklahoma Orchid Society exhibit, Jerry, Johnita, and Catherine will be turning in everybody's tags plus the OOS exhibit entry tag all at once, so it all stays together. Okay, so that's how that'll work. But if you were doing your own exhibit, then you would fill those out, however many plants you had in it, plus whatever exhibits you're gonna be doing.
Yeah, if you were doing something just miniatures and you had this great big thing, it just didn't really fit. Well, just put that in the society exhibit. You could do that.
It just wasn't my understanding if you could enter novice and 5 or below.
No, you
just
usually pick one. That's all the flower stuff. Well, maybe you're in the collectibles or something like that. So if you have a bunch of dishware or china, something like that, that's got a lot of orchid theme and all that stuff, you can set up a little display of orchids collectibles or artwork. And we've got our buddy there, Mr. Hess down there. He makes that beautiful prints and all that stuff. If you had a bunch of orchid prints or something, you could very easily set those up as a very tasteful type of an exhibit.
Not someone else.
Okay.
You have to be the artist.
You can't buy a picture and enter.
No. You have to be the artist to enter an art. What if it was donated? You have to be the artist, to enter it. And you have. That's right. You could go there and you could do collections. That could be in
Well,
collections.
if you do embroidery or something like that, if you embroidered something and framed it, that would be perfectly acceptable. So other types of exhibit would be like conservation or educational type things. So if you wanted to do a display that showed repotting or different families of orchids, yes, sir.
I did one once that was a species of the world. So I had species from like Madagascar and I don't know, Malaysia and South America and Brazil and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was educational.
Yeah, that's a case where you'd you'd enter the exhibit as an educational type thing, and then you would also register the plants to be judged for the plants too. So there's another case where you could be registered in more than one kind of a thing. But I know Carolyn did the vanilla thing where she showed the plants and the beans and fermenting them, and then you finally get to the point where you've got the vanilla sugar and all this kind of stuff. So always look for conservation. You can go out and go do some research or something on a particular, like Mark was talking about, plants in a certain place around the world or whatever, and talk about the different species and get some pictures, and you can get these nice little trifold cardboard things now at Walmart and all that kind of stuff. You could pin that stuff on. So don't, and like you said, as part of the explanation, the plants could very well be judged as well. So also consider those. I think we got some pictures showing some of that stuff. So here's an example of the tableware. Isn't that beautiful? The crystal is really pretty. We got bunches of that. And there's actually, I think it was a year or 2 years ago, I won at the auction the orchid flatware.
Oh, yeah.
So all the flatware was orchids too. Here's showing the artwork. I think some of this was embroidered, if I remember correctly. And you see, you could still put some plants in it, as part of it. Notice they used a little bit of greenery in the thing there just to give a little more texture to the thing and give you some balance. I really like the way this one is balanced. That thing in the middle is a little bit dark. Not sure what that was, but You see how it's very symmetrical, the way he put it together. And I really like the texture of the ivy or whatever they put on the table with it. If you like doing corsages, if you're good at corsages, I love YouTube. Go on YouTube, say orchid, orchid flower corsages and how to do that stuff. You can find out how to do anything. You can go on and type, how do I start up a 747? There's a video tell you what button to hit. Okay. And it's only a few buttons if you know which ones to hit. But go ahead and think about making some corsages or an arrangement or something like that.
No, we are not having orchids in use at this show. Next slide.
Oh, you're
So
killing
Janet just
me.
indicated we're
Janet,
not
you're killing
having a orchids in use section.
We used to have the orchids in use, and we had the viola people come over, and they did some absolutely spectacular designs when it came to arrangements and all that stuff. Here would be more of a educational kind of exhibit here. It's kind of hard to see if you, on the bottom there, they're showing different kinds of potting medium and so forth like that. So I think they're trying to tell you what you can kind of grow them in and so forth like that. So, I mean, that's something that you could set up very easily as a educational category. Okay, 5 orchids or less. What do you think of this one? What's your thoughts on this? To me, it's kind of jumbled. That I think they meant well when they were going to do the basket, but I think the basket overwhelmed and all the flower and all that stuff. And you see where the vanda's kind of hanging down there. The flower gets lost in all the noise. So I think it would have worked better if they'd taken the vanda and moved it up. You see where you've got that dendrobium on the top there, hanging behind the curtain. If they raised the vanda up there and they got rid of the basket, I think it would have been a little clearer. So it's just my opinion. I think it's great that they actually entered, but I mean,
It's a mess.
and the stuff that's in the basket is kind of getting lost in the noise. Okay. Now this is really, really classy, isn't it? This was really classy. My only thing is I love the driftwood and a little bit of moss, but I don't think we necessarily needed the stones and the deer antlers. So, I mean, we're just trying to be critiquing here, and I'm just saying I love the driftwood. I love the way it's laid out. Yeah. I'm not sure if it was meant to be part of that or just happened to be in the line of view. But here they just did it's just an exhibit of the slipper orchids. There's some papillopetalums and looks like some cypripediums in there. And unfortunately, there's a couple of the smaller ones in the middle there that kind of got lost in the noise. So maybe that should have been pulled out a little bit towards the front, but I don't think we needed necessarily the stones. Maybe it was orchid hunts. Maybe the theme was orchid hunting or something like that. And then somehow they had to get a deer antler in there to do the theme. But the one thing they do stress about is if you have an orchid theme with pirates or something like that, we don't need a whole pirate ship. Okay. Maybe just something that would show a small treasure chest with a few coins or something like that. But the props are supposed to be very minimal. They're only supposed to show that you thought about the theme of the show, not that you're trying to be Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay. So I like this one, and see how nice the leaves were. They really, really show up nice. But there's just a few. The only problem is some of those smaller ones just kind of get lost. So they probably should have been moved maybe up front and maybe closer to the center. What about this one?
Very full. It's out of balance to me. There's waiting with flowers on one side, waiting foliage on the other.
Well, you're absolutely right. You notice on the right how bright, full everything is, and then you go to the left side of it and everything disappears.
Yeah.
So and we said that we showed that light spectrum showing this going from the purple to the reds or whatever. And over here, there's a lot of the lavender and the purple that should have been pushed together. And you see how the whites pull your eyes up to see that, and then you don't see all that. And all the stuff on the left is almost totally out of sight. Now, to give him some credit though, this is a huge exhibit with a lot of plants. So it's really tough to set something like that up. I think what they should have done is taken the taller stuff and put it on the top, and then brought the smaller stuff towards the front and to the bottom, and then watch their color so that they, because your eye's going up to the top and to the right. So, but congrats for all the work to set that thing up.
Yeah.
Another huge exhibit. I do like on the upper left, the tree branches with the stuff hanging off of it. I think that looks really, really cool. And it looks like they tried to get all the purple stuff over to the right. And then, so the red and the purple are on the right side. And then if you look in the middle, there's yellow. And then it's trying to get lighter and lighter and lighter. I think they probably did about as good as they could with as many plants as they had to show off. But that's a huge exhibit. There's a lot of work there. They spent hours setting that thing up, hours. Notice the black background. It looks like they used burlap for the base. If they'd used something darker like black, it might have brought out some of those other colors a little bit. You know what I mean on the bottom? So maybe a black on the floor matting there on the exhibit might have brought some of those other colors out, because your eyes are going down to the light, right? Okay. It's always easy to criticize someone else's work.
Yeah.
Now this is kind of cool. What do you think of this?
Why are there shoes out there?
This man's jacket and a pair of trousers and a six.
Something about traveling.
Yeah, right.
And then there's a family picture in there, and then it looks like there's a suitcase, right?
Right.
Maybe it's some kind of travel thing.
Yeah.
Well, this is a case I think where maybe the theme was travel or whatever like that. I think they overdid it. I think they could have left the clothes out and just showed the suitcase as the center prop. And I think, and I don't think we necessarily needed the picture. If travel was the theme, I think that big suitcase trunk would have served the purpose.
Yeah.
So that was just my thought. So I think the furniture and the shoes and all that can go. Notice when they draped the pot, the little white one on the left side, you see how that kind of draws your eye down there? I think that should have been black. We want to showcase the flowers, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the show, showcase the flowers. So I think I would have taken that white with the polka dots or whatever and made that darker, and then gotten rid of that other one on the other side there, that blue and white, and gone to black there. And like I said, remove the pants and the jacket, and maybe some of those photographs, so that we could just focus on the orchids. I love the basket though, with all the orchids in there. I thought that's pretty cool looking. But I think the blue is too distracting. I like this. How about that? See how when they use the draping around all the plants and all that stuff, how it hid all the pots, and now we're looking at just the orchids, right? We're seeing the foliage, we're seeing the plants. You see how they use height to get some of the taller stuff up and then make room for the smaller stuff. They use some moss in the middle there to give it a little bit of more texture. I think I would have gone with a green moss on the table. Instead of the Spanish moss. Yeah, that's true. That's true. You're right. Definitely or spray paint them black. Get a can of spray paint them black. They'll disappear. But I think this is very, very classy. And they separate the colors. The whites were further down and the darker colors are on the top. And the color flow looked pretty good. But I do think I would have used more of a green moss instead of the Spanish moss. And of course, the white tags kind of take away from things too. The black tags would have been a lot more classier. But I mean, other than that, the way it was set up and all that stuff, I thought they did a good job. Yeah, someone had some absolutely beautiful dendrobium. Looks like the dendrobiums or cymbidiums. I mean, oncidiums there. Those are just had to be a long time ago. Well, you know, one of the things they were talking about is please get your plants here early if you want to be in the society exhibit, because they don't have the benefit of setting this thing up the night before. So, and that's just it. I mean, they want to try to work with what they've got. And the last thing you want is someone to bring in 20 plants and it's like, oh no, now we got to move everything all over again, start over again. So that's, you know, we're not trying to be mean when we say, please get your plants early. It's just that the team that's working on setting up the exhibit needs to strategize with what colors they've got, where they need to place them and so forth like that.
What year was this one? That is a beautiful display.
It was in Shreveport. Bill, do you remember what year that was? Shreveport, the last time, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, something like that. A while.
But the that center with all the yellow and all that stuff is just spectacular. I would have loved to seen that in person. I probably did and just don't remember. But
Yes, it was McCabe's dendrobium.
it probably would have been nicer if the drapes curved around to the side a little bit. I mean, if they had the extra staging material to make the background come around to the side. This way we would have seen the plants on the edges a little bit clearer, but absolutely nice job by the team.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's Red Rivers. Yeah. That'll be total lighting.
Yeah, that's, sometimes the problems can overdo it, and then who knows with the flash, they may have used a flash on it that added additional light to it, so forth like that.
These lights, they really mess up the color. So they brought their own lights so that it actually give you the true color of the plants.
Those reds and purples pop, doesn't it?
Yeah, and when you.
My
have
only
these kind of
comment is
lights,
that if they'd gone to a green moss instead of the Spanish moss, that would have made the plants stand out a little bit more. I think that was my only comment on that. They definitely have the colors where all the whites are in one area and the purples are over here and so forth like that. But I think with the way the photograph took, it really, you just got an awful lot of color from light from that Spanish moss. Oh. Nice, really nice.
That's Kansas. OOS is in Kansas.
The only thing again, like the pipes we said was, would have been nice if they were spray painted black or, so I may do that. I may just, when I go home, the next time I'll pull all that stuff out and I'll just spray paint all my backdrop pipes.
Each spray that we got from Quick Change Oil loaned it to us. We spray painted it black because the theme of the show was spring into orchids. So we had the spray, and we had a few strategic springs sticking up in there too.
So like she said was, you want to follow the theme, but you don't want the theme to overwhelm the exhibit. So this was very classy. They did a nice job. Like I said, the poles, I think, were the only real distraction here. Oh, there was just a,
Oh, we got the Orchid Digest to work for that. Too.
yeah. Here's an example where they probably tried to squeeze too many plants in. You know, they're trying to put every plant in there. They probably could have had room for another half a table if they had it. But I mean, sometimes you just deal with what you got. There's some. And it looks like they ended up putting some on the floor. They probably could have just put another bench in the front and de-jumbled it a little bit by putting some other plants on the floor. Really classy. See, even the black, the lights are black, so we don't have to see them. That big phalaenopsis in the middle is kind of the center and the focal point that takes your eye into it. And then you've got a couple up on the either side there. I think it would have been nice if they had something else on the left side to kind of balance the one on the right. You know, just because I'm always looking at things being symmetrical. I mean, that's just the way I am. I want to give me a yardstick and a ruler and all that stuff. But I mean, if you don't have it, you don't have it. Because there's some other small stuff that maybe that big green thing on the right could have been moved inward and then move the smaller stuff out, so it seemed a little more balanced. But we weren't there the day that all this stuff showed up, so who knows what they had to work with. So we did a little critiquing. Like I said, consider entering the novice. What's our show theme going to be?
Orchid Kicks on Route 66, and the deadline for your entry, it's April 3rd, but I really need by April 2nd because we have to do what's called staging, which means we have to plot out all the square footage and where everything's going to fit. So I can't have someone coming in the day saying, oh, I decided to put in an exhibit. It's just not possible to do that. So I've got extra hard copy forms. There's forms online. But I do need to, if you're going to put in your own exhibit, I need to know by April 2nd.
So
Just for an exhibit. I mean, plants are different, but for a separate exhibit, need to know ahead of time.
So start looking for like Route 66 signs and maybe an old car or something like that you could put in the middle, or might be real cool to get a tire and put all the plants inside the tire. I mean, start thinking about the theme and so forth like that. And if you're a few plants short, just run over to Sarah or Brian and fill up your exhibit. Well, rent them out.
I mean, that would have one.
Why?
Talk to me.
Great, thank you, Mike.